Hey, it's Mark here. Before we begin today's episode, I want to let you know a couple of things. Number one, if you've heard me say this before, it'll probably resonate. I think inspiration is great, but taking action is even better. I've been told by so many of you over the years how overwhelming it can be to try and sift through all the information, and it can feel like we're suffering from infobesity. So I've actually sat down with 10 of the most inspiring people I know to get a really practical insight into how to actually land that TEDx talk, how to actually win an award for your business to elevate your profile, how to actually get featured in your favorite media or be on Forbes.com or grow your LinkedIn profile. All of these questions that you probably have, I've sat down with world-class experts to distill their most practical and secret tips that I think are going to blow you away. You can check it out at www.miniexpertseries.com. And over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be giving all the proceeds of this program to UNICEF's fund support for the children in Ukraine. So if you want to get involved, support a good cause, and at the same time turn your inspiration into action, go to www.miniexpertseries.com. And I cannot wait to hear just how far and wide your impact and your message goes. The second thing I want to mention is that in today's episode, there is some explicit language that may offend some of our viewers or listeners. So discretion is advised. You may want to put some headphones in or wait until the children are in bed or out of the house for you to listen to this. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hi, and welcome to the Unconventionalists podcast. I'm your host, Mark Leruste, and this is a show about what it really means to turn your message into a movement. I'm really excited about today's guest. It's a really exciting conversation. It's actually the second time we've recorded this. We had some technical issues. We had really a dress rehearsal, and this is the real deal. I've been blown away, if I'm being honest, by today's guest, JeVon McCormick, who is the CEO of Scribe Media Company, who is also the author of a groundbreaking book, I Got There. As you'll hear in our conversation today, we talked about the emotional journey of having to go into the darkest places of our soul to face our most shameful and guiltful stories, and what the process is of actually sharing that with the world, and what helped JeVon get over his demons and get over his fears to actually be of service and support others. And it's an incredible story. We really go deep. And as mentioned at the start of the podcast, we talk about sensitive topics, and there's, explicit language. And some of this may be difficult to hear or be with. So be aware, if you need to take care of your needs, that's okay to pause this episode. But know that this is powerful and this is needed. It's been an honor to have this conversation. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. If you did, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, because only when you share these conversations can we have the real impact that we're trying to have here at the Unconventionalists. And as you've heard me mention before, and I'll talk about this in the podcast too, I've got a book coming out, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about it on my newsletter. So if you want to join, that's the unconventionalist.com/newsletter. I'll put all the links in the show notes below. And I'd love you be part of this journey. If there's something that resonates with you today, if it spoke to you, I'll be sharing more of these kind of conversation stories in my upcoming book. So I can't wait to share that with you. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the one and only JeVon McCormick. Welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you back. For those who are tuning in, this is the second time. We had like a dress rehearsal. This is the real interview. This is the podcast.
We were just practicing last time, man.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm grateful you're here. And look, I've got a ton of questions I want to ask you. One of the main reasons why I brought you in is because I read your book, which I'm showing you to the camera. I Got There, How I Overcame Racism, Poverty, and Abuse to Achieve the American Dream. It's one of the books that had a profound impact on me. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into this book. And the first question I'll kind of dive in is that you're the CEO of a company. Now, surely at business school, people would be told, if you're the CEO of a company, you do not want to let people know about your past, about the warts and all. Tell me in what way are you an unconventional leader?
Oh, well, yeah, especially, I guess if you're most people, and I say this respectfully because not all, but most people at business school definitely aren't there with my background. So it's, how is it unconventional for me? One, I believe, so we're a transparent organization. So everyone knows what my salary is. All of our salaries are transparent. So everyone knows what everyone makes. We share the income statement every month. You know what the company's made, what we haven't made, what the amount of money that's in the bank. It's all transparent. So equally, I'm transparent about my background. You know, my dad was a pimp and drug dealer. My dad put women on a street corner. They sold their bodies, and my dad took every dollar. My dad had 23 children. I'm one of 23. My mother was an orphan. I don't know where my last name comes from. Here in the States, I only have a GED. I never went to college or university. I've been, sexually molested by one of my dad's prostitutes at the age of 6, 7, 8 years old, in and out of juvenile prison 3 different times. So, transparency goes across the board. I'm not just transparent on the financials and salaries. I'm transparent about my background. I'm transparent in the fact that I share with people most of the teaching, coaching, and mentoring I do is by way of my mistakes. So I share with people, yes, I struggled mightily in relationships. I could not hold a relationship. I've been married to my wife 10 years now. This is the first healthy relationship I had. Prior to my wife, I was a monster. I was disrespectful. I was derogatory. I was rude. I was a beast in relationships. I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. I never had one modeled for me, but at the same time, I don't use that as an excuse. So that those may be the truth of the matter, but it's still up to me to learn how to become better and improve and grow as a person.
What changed 10 years ago? Because you said that up until 10 years ago, right? Like you were struggling relationships. What shifted?
It actually was a little bit prior to 10 years ago. It was around 2007, actually. So if you remember the big credit crisis, the housing crisis, especially here in America, and I was in the mortgage industry, and I went broke. And so I remember coming home one day, and I was in my little small apartment now, and I was broke. There was no more money. I had nothing else. And I remember I had to look in the mirror and say to myself, okay, so you've had a lot of money. Now you don't have money, but what's your character? What are you now? The money, you had this money, but your character was still poor. Now you don't have money and you still have the same character. And I had to look in the mirror and have an out loud conversation, not just a conversation in my head. I had an out loud conversation, and I had to admit, I was a lot like my father when it came to relationships. And because of that, that openness with myself, I set out on a path of, okay, how do I become a better person? How do I change my character? How do I grow? How do I improve? And just like I did with everything else in my life, I watched other people. How do I model a relationship? What's that even look like? I never saw my dad treat women respectfully. I hadn't seen my mom in healthy relationships, so I didn't know. So I had to be the outsider looking in, watching other people to see what that looks like.
And what I find fascinating, right, is that, again, and I say this, it's because what I got really excited about interviewing you, it's very rare to find, you're an award-winning CEO and you're now leading an award-winning company who was voted best culture according to Entrepreneur in the USA. And yet you have written on paper some unbelievable stories. We talked about this last time. Like if this was a Hollywood film, you wouldn't believe it because of the amount of adversity you went through. You, from the get-go in this conversation, were able to kind of list a lot of the things that you share about, and there's even more in this book. Were you always that comfortable? And
No.
If not, what helped you?
No, hell no. so no, I mean, the great majority of my life. So that book was published in January of 2017. And truth be told, Mark, that book was done 100% for my children. I never wanted that book to be public. I never wanted anyone to read it. It was a legacy piece because I don't have a legacy. Like I said, my dad was a pimp, had 23 kids. My mom was raised in an orphanage. We don't know where my last name comes from. I can't tell you. She received the last name in the orphanage. No clue where, why, how. So for me, that book was a legacy piece so my children would be able to at least say, okay, dad is where it all started. Okay, we can at least track to dad or where this party started. But prior to that, man, I didn't want anyone who's want to walk around and say, oh, hey, how you doing? My dad was a pimp and drug dealer, had 23 kids. Want to go out on a date? And, so no, I didn't want anyone to know my background. In fact, my wife said it best. I was a chameleon at times. Yeah. I was whatever I needed to be to get to wherever I wanted to go. And so, there's people out there who thought for years I had an MBA. Hey, if that's what you thought, I ran with that. There's people for years that never knew my actual name was JeVon. They just knew JT McCormick. No clue that, I've had people ask me, what's JT stand for? I go, JT. And so it's no one knew that JeVon, because again, and I'll share the story to this. Early in my career, early 20s, I was trying to get on people's calendars and I could not land appointments. Couldn't get on people's calendars, couldn't get an appointment, couldn't get a call back. And one white gentleman picked up the phone one day and he says to me, hey, how did you get a Black first name, JeVon, and an Irish last name, McCormick? Here's the crazy thing, Mark. I didn't know my last name was Irish. So I was elated. I was like, oh shit, my last name's Irish. This is amazing. And I got to call my mom. And so I was so excited that I found out my last name was Irish. But what I realized when I hung up the phone was, oh, they're not calling back because JeVon is calling. They're seeing the name JeVon. So my full name is JeVon Thomas McCormick. So I made the decision to edit myself. And I started going by JT McCormick. Mark, the following week, man, I got on people's calendars. I got appointments. And from the age of early 20s until the George Floyd murder here in the States, so 2 years ago, I went by JT McCormick. Yeah. So when
but then you reclaimed your name, right?
Like then I reclaimed my name, and I'll even give you the reason how that came about. When the George Floyd murder happened here in the States, you saw all kinds of virtue signaling. I mean, we were talking Blackout Tuesday on social media, and I'm like, what the hell does that do to help anybody? I mean, we were arguing about a syrup bottle. I mean, come on, a syrup bottle. Yeah. Again, what does that do to help us move forward? But then I saw one article, and this jumped out to me. I saw an article that said that there were only 3 Fortune 500 Black CEOs in America. And that intrigued me. So I went and looked up their names. Marvin Ellison, Kenneth Frazier, and Roger Ferguson. As a bonus, the wealthiest Black man in America is named Robert Smith. So 4 very ethnic-free names, if you will. And so it hit me. I thought, okay, and you just touched on this. All right, I've won some awards. I've got some quote unquote credentials. We've done a few things. Best CEO in America, or in Austin, #1 company culture in America, best place to work in Austin and Texas. So okay, we've done some things. So I said I'm going to reclaim my name and go by JeVon. And I did it because, you know what? I became part of the problem. I edited myself to fit the playbook for corporate America. And so I reclaimed my name, JeVon, and I did it for every kid out there, this name, Rayvante, Martavius, LaQuanda, Lucretia, and maybe one day when they hit the business world, they can work next to a JeVon and not just a JT. So again, I realized I was part of the problem as well because I edited myself to fit the playbook of corporate America.
Yeah, and in your book, you kind of you alert to this and you speak to this, which is the kind of like the other path almost. Like you talk about, the most conventional path being broadcasted out there. It is around you can become an athlete, a singer, or like an artist or a drug dealer, but actually you can become a CEO. And I think there's something really powerful in that you're putting out there. And before I revert back to questions about the book, what was that like for you to reclaim your name, and what changed, if anything?
Wow, what was it like right off the bat? It took me time to get used to. When I would hear someone say JeVon, I who the hell? I didn't know who they were talking to.
How do you know?
Hey,
who knows?
That's
who told
my
you?
name.
Yeah.
So that took time to hear people, quote unquote, say my name, and that took a moment. What did it feel like? It felt good. I've even been asked this question recently. Would I do it again? Given the times of when I made that change, yes, I would do it again. I did what I had to do to get to where I wanted to go. Chameleon. But what's equally as important, I do believe the times have changed. I won't say quite a bit, but they have changed. And again, you have to be the change you want to see. Yeah. So now I had to go in and change and reclaim my name, because again, I don't want other people to have to edit themselves to quote unquote fit in. That's unacceptable. So you have to be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah. And so I could see that. And I could also see how when you wrote your book, I think something you mentioned to me previously is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had a particular turbulent time on a plane, and you don't do well in turbulence on planes. And that's kind of what sparked you the idea of like, if I died on this plane, my story would die with me, the legacy, my kids wouldn't really know. I mean, I would kind of perpetual almost legacy wounds, right? Of intergenerational wounds. And so you wrote the book. So you originally write this book with the only intention of writing it for your kids. At what point? Because, and the reason why I'm saying this is that when you're writing this book, is your idea like, I'm writing this for my kids? So you've got your kids as your audience when you're writing this book? Was that kind of the process?
So when we started, yes, it was just, I wanted to share my collection of stories with my kids. Truth be told, we actually had to go back through and deconstruct the entire manuscript, because once our editors, our writers, our tribe members, once it got out that people started reading my story internally and seeing this, they were like, oh, JeVon, you JT at the time, you got to share this. You got to make it open. This will help people. You got to make it public. And I was like, oh, hell no. And so through a lot of conversations, a lot of support, a lot of encouragement from so many people, I said, okay, we'll make it public. So we had to go back through and make it more of a readable story for people in
to make
public,
it appeal,
not
like
just
more
for
like a
children.
universe. Yeah.
Right.
So I want to pick on that. Sorry to interrupt. I want to pick on that. You said, oh, hell no. When they said you're going to go from like, what was the oh, hell no about? Tell me, what is like your fears? Because I'm currently, as you know, I'm writing a book that's coming out in September around this, the idea of like owning your story, right? And I identified, I think, 9 or 10 story blockers. And I'm just curious to hear from you, what was the fear? What was the oh, hell no about?
For me, again, matter of fact, I'll even share with you the most freeing page in that book. There's a page that says, my name is JeVon Thomas McCormick. I don't have a college education. I have a GED. I'm half white, half black. My dad was a pimp and drug dealer. My mom was an orphan. And it just goes through. And all of the things that I had, fear, concern, shame, that I did not want people to know, there it was. And so even now, CEO of a publishing company, people will ask, well, how can I make my book the very best? Share the details. Share those dirty, ugly, dark, go down in the basement in that back corner that you swore no one was ever going to know. One of the stories in there that my wife, no one knew I had never shared is the story
with your baby sister,
you read the book where I talk about throwing my baby sister, my 6-month-old baby sister when I was 9. No, that story was in chains in a vault thrown to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And I shared that.
Why out of all the stories? Because I remember reading those pages, and actually what I felt for you was compassion, a lot of compassion and empathy for what you were going through. And why out of all the stories that you shared, from you playing cards in the dad's pile of cocaine in his room to like being homeless and sexually, like so many stories, why was that story the most vulnerable for you to open up about?
Because the other stories were about me, and I hurt my little sister. You know, granted, she landed on the couch, but she was 6 months old, and it hurt me that Shane, 9 years old, and I threw my baby sister. You know, that really that's disturbing. So it frustrated me. There was shame. There was embarrassment. There was, come on, you're better than that. And then to put that out there, of course, there's the fear of being judged, all of the things that go into it. But again, it was my story. Even this, Mark, this is I'll share one with you. The part where being sexually molested. One of my dad's prostitutes used to force me to perform oral sex on her at the ages of 6, 7, 8 years old. And now, it's my story, but I've made peace with it. But I've shared that story sometimes in a joking way that is offensive to some people. I tell people, look, I'm 50 years old, but when I was a kid, when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, that prostitute, when I would perform oral sex on her, if I didn't do it right, she would smack me in the face, punch me in the head. And I tell people, I said, I'm 50 years old now, and I know grown-ass adults that don't know what do it right means. And some people find that tasteless. Some people find that I'm making light of a serious situation. And it is a serious situation. But again, it's my story.
It's your experience.
So if I want to approach my story in that manner, it's my story. I've had to go down in that dark basement and deal with that and realize some of the ramifications of it. And if you will, Mark, I'll even give you this piece of it.
Please.
It was about 2-3 years ago. My wife and I were sitting on the couch. It was Christmas time. We had put the kids to bed and we're watching a movie. And my wife looks over at me and she says, hey, I got a question for you. How come you've never allowed me to initiate sex? And, we had been together 9 years at that point. Yeah. And I usually pride myself on having an answer, and I didn't have an answer. And I said, I don't know. Let me think about that. And, this is 2 years ago. Book was already out. I had already dealt with the trauma of that. But then 2 weeks after she asked me that question, I came back up to her and I said, oh God, I know why. And she said, I know why what? I said, the question you asked me, why don't I allow you to initiate sex? I said, as painful as it was, I had to go back through my entire adulthood and realize I've never allowed any woman to initiate sex. And I had to trace it all the way back because that prostitute, when she would force me to perform oral sex, she initiated it. And because of that, here I was, 46, 47 years old.
Still the 6-year-old wounded child.
Still that I will not allow you to initiate sex. So, what I have found now that the book is out there, the amount of emails, the people that will come up to me after I speak at a conference and they tell me how much the book helped them or help them deal with past trauma or address someone in their life or just even think about things. I never expected that. I mean, I get emails from people in Africa, people in Sweden, places I've never even been. And so it's very humbling. I'm very proud that I made the decision to do it. It's flattering. But yeah, it was tough. That book was not supposed to be published.
No, and look, we didn't want to acknowledge you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and your leadership, because I think they're all three in there in what you're talking about right now and also in your book. And there's a question that I have to ask because I know people listening will be itching to know the answer. And that is, you went down that cave, you went down in the deepest, darkest secrets of chains, and you could have faced them, but never found the courage to share them. I'm just wondering, what helped you? What can we share with people listening and watching here that helped you to go from shame to service?
When people would tell me that reading my story or hearing my story helped them, and knowing that someone else out there went through something similar or something, even a lot of people have shared with me that they have no similarity to my story whatsoever. They've got different trauma. They've got different things that they went through, but seeing that someone who went through these things actually has shared them publicly, said them out loud, someone who, success is all up to the person. So, people will view me as successful, but knowing that I've quote unquote overcome, I don't know that I've overcome. I've dealt with, I've accepted, I've even embraced at times the things that I went through. I don't know that you ever overcome.
I think it's cyclical.
Yeah,
the
one piece that I will say is I never, ever allowed myself to live in a victim mentality. Yes, I was victimized, but I never walked around with the, oh, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? I come from a broken home and my dad was a pimp, and I don't make excuses. And I've even had people, you can call me a smartass for this, Mark. I've had people say, well, I'm not making excuses, but I am giving you the reasons. And I've said reasons is nothing but a cute word for excuses. So I don't, my dad was a pimp. Okay, I can't change that, period. That prostitute sexually molested me. I can't change that. But what I can change is the next hour, the next week, the next month, year. So I choose to focus on the things that I have the power to change, not the things that I can't change. I can't go back to the age of 6, 7, 8 years old.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've heard you talk about seeing your background, your story as being very fortunate. That some people look at you and think about how unfortunate you are and how sorry you must be, but you actually are quick to correct and say, no, you're actually, I don't think you've used the word grateful, but I'm just putting word in your mouth. But like there's a part of that feels like I have lived things and experienced things that no one else will ever be able to understand the world the way that I can. Was that did I make that up?
No, you nailed it. And I am grateful. It even took my mom, she even had a hard time when, because I wasn't with my mom from the age of 9 to 15. Yeah. And that's for my mom, that's her biggest regret in life, that I was off with my dad. And because that's arguably one of the most chaotic, if not the most chaotic time period in my life. Yeah. And my mom's got a lot of regret there. And I tell my mom, I go, no, that was one of the greatest blessings I was ever given. There are things, like you said, that I know about life, a different side to the society, the world, that most people will never know. And it's been such a gift, such a blessing. And yeah, there was a lot of negativity that happened, but I share with people all the time, there is positive situations. Yeah. There's positivity to take from every negative situation. And I've had people challenge me with this. They said, okay, tell me what's the positive that came from being sexually molested by that prostitute. And I can tell people exactly what it was. I was 8 years old, and it had been going on for 2-3 years now. And I remember, for whatever reason, she was just on one that day. She was beating the hell out of me. And I remember she was like, do it right, and smacking me in the face, punching me in the head. I'm crying, I'm confused, I'm frustrated, and I don't know what to do. And I remember, Mark, I said, while she was punching me, I said, okay, I am never going to be in a situation where I don't know what to do. Where the positive is in that, so much of that moment came from me always being observant, paying attention. How do I look at my surroundings? How do I see what's coming next? And so much of it came from that situation. So for me, that is the positive takeaway that I have from that. I'll equally share the negative that came away from that. It created perfectionism in me. Everything I wanted to be, everything I did, I wanted to be perfect. And we all know there's no such thing as perfect. I would even make the smart ass comment, Mark. People would say, well, there's no such thing as perfect. I said, look, I may never touch perfection, but damn it, I'm going to get close enough to smell it. And so it's, but I come to realize that there's no such thing as perfection. And all of us walking this earth make mistakes. And that's a big thing for me, is that you heard me say this earlier. I teach, coach, and mentor through my mistakes. It's the most asinine thing you hear in life. People say we learn the most through our mistakes. But what I find very interesting, Mark, no one shares their mistakes. Yeah. So if we learn the most from them, why don't we share them? And so for me, I share my mistakes.
You know, what you speak to, actually, I want to underline, is one of the 3 elements in logotherapy, which Viktor Frankl talks about. While Freud was busy saying that all we are doing is driven by pleasure, Viktor Frankl believed that actually in the absence of meaning, we seek pleasure, but actually what we all seek is meaning. And he had 3 things. He said, we need to work on a project that's bigger than us. We need to have an ability, which is what you're talking about, to reframe pain in terms of a lesson. And third one is we need to be part of a community who we feel supported by and belong to.
I love that. I'm paraphrasing. I may be off here. The Search for Man's Meaning. Viktor Frankl.
That's it. Man's Search for Meaning.
I read that book for the first time 2 years ago. And let me rephrase that. I listened to that book because I don't read books. So I listened to that book.
I get that.
Amazing book.
Yeah, and it's powerful, and I think it's what you talk about. And I'm going to just repeat what you said, just in case people miss that, because it was so crucial. The thing that helped you get over this was actually the feedback you were hearing from people who were reading your story, engaging your story in a safe way, right? Who were like in a very tight-knit community of your editors and your publishing, team, who said, JeVon, this, or JT at the time, this could really help. And getting that feedback from hearing that you could actually help someone to feel not alone is what got you over the barrier of fear or shame. And that's a super powerful thing I want to underline. One of the things that I also want to mention is that how we came to be in this conversation is, so I interviewed Tucker Max, and Emily Gindelsberger. So I pretty much had everyone on the team now almost. And Tucker shared a story, which I want to share because I think this is an element also that illustrates your leadership, I think, style. And correct me if I'm wrong, but back then I think it was still called Book in the Box. Back then Tucker, I think, was still CEO. He'd brought in this person who he had hired to become the next MD. And I think he was struggling. And for whatever reason, I don't know how this happened, but anyway, he invited you to observe this meeting, and you came in to sit on. I don't know if the conversation of you coming in was already there, but anyway, you're sitting there, and effectively Tucker, in his own words, loses his shit and starts like yelling at this person because he clearly feels she's incompetent. Clearly she's a reflection of his own ability to own his own mistake and responsibility, right? And I think you stepped in, and we talked about this a little bit, but I want to underline this because I love this. And instead of challenging him or threatening him, you asked him a question. Do you remember what that question was?
Does this get you any closer to your goal?
Yeah.
And it was. I wasn't. I was only a client with the company at that time, and he invited me to that meeting, and I just sat there and I watched and I observed. And even now, most of my leadership is done by way of questions. And so, I asked him, I said, does your actions get you any closer to your goal? Does that help you accomplish what the way you're acting right now? Does that get you closer to what you're trying to accomplish? And obviously he knew the answer.
And so he steps down. The short version is that he ends up stepping down. They invite you to come on as CEO. Now, for those who haven't read your book, and they are going to read the book because it's amazing, you end up rising the ranks of a software company, become CEO of a company, and you don't know how to code. And you're now inviting to become the CEO of a publishing company and you don't know how to write or spell. What made you want to jump from like your, I want to say, quote unquote, comfortable job as CEO of a software company that you've been doing well, to taking on this challenge of a fast kind of scale up startup with also a lot of uncertainty in the air?
A couple of things. One, that my book would have never been able to be written without a company like this. So I was really intrigued that there was a company out there that I could speak my book and they could help me bring it to life. It's still my words, my content, my tone, my voice, my book. But I just get to speak it versus sitting down and writing it, because if that had happened, it was never going to happen. The other piece too was straightforward. People say confidence is built, and I disagree. I believe confidence is a choice. When you wake up in the morning, you have the choice to be confident, or you have the choice to be timid and meek or negative. You have the choice to be positive. You have the choice to see the world as everything's against you. So for me as a kid, there were times where confidence was all I had in the world. I may not have had food. I may not have had electricity. I may not have had people who cared or were loving, but damn it, when I woke up, I had confidence because it's free. It's like confidence and air, like the only two free things left in the world. And so it's when
and kindness. I would add kindness.
And kindness, yeah. Again, that's a choice. That's you have a choice. Choices are free as well. It's interesting. Some of the things that are truly free are the most just important, powerful things that you have. Choice, the power of choice. If you are in prison, you have a choice on how you're going to wake up each day. How am I going to see this prison situation? When I was a kid, I had a choice. How are you going to see the world? So to bring it back to what you said about Tucker and Scribe, I had helped, because it's never one person. I had helped scale a software company, went from the lowest paid person to the president of the company, and we did that. As you said, I don't write code, and here I had this opportunity to be the CEO of a publishing company, and I can't tell you an adverb from an adjective. I was like, man, God bless America, and so this is I'm in. And again, belief in myself, and here's what's important too. I saw the company much like, think back and imagine being employee number 7 at Facebook, number 13 at Amazon, number 12 at Google. And I saw the opportunity as such. I was like, wow, this is one of those opportunities that come across very few times in life. You can be a part of this. And so here we are now, 6 years later, over 100 people. We've worked with over 2,000 authors. Like you named all the great awards and credentials that we've won. So and again, but at the end of the day, it was belief in myself. And Mark, I got to share this with you. If I go back to that 2007 looking in the mirror moment, I've done this probably since my late teens. When you look in the mirror and you feel, because many of us have, that no one likes you, no one loves you, no one cares, you should always be in the be able to look in the mirror and know that there's one person in the world that always loves you, and it's you. And that's that. I've lived on that, because
You've never struggled
at the
with
end
that?
of the day,
You never struggle with
no,
self-love and
I've never struggled with that, because here's the thing. I also find it very maybe selfish. I don't know the right word. But how dare you expect someone else to like or love you if you don't even like or love yourself? Like that's a vicious thing. Like, you can't expect for me to love you if you don't love you. So for me, if no one likes me in this world, I know I always have me that loves me, and I love me some me.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's interesting you say that. I remember being really stole by an Instagram. I was scrolling when I used to be on Instagram. I'd be on Instagram, and I saw this post that said, if I asked you to list all the things you love in life, how long would it take you before you put your name down?
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, that's a good point. I'd even think about it, right? But what you're saying is, and it reminds me of
that should be number one.
Yeah, right. Which is, I remember asking, a piece of advice from a guest many years ago, and he said, love yourself unconditionally like nothing else mattered.
Yep.
And I remember this is 5-6 years ago. And I remember going like, that's a bit of a nod, but now it's really landing, especially being a dad. We're coming to the end of the interview. I've got a couple of questions I want to get in. One of them is, and I want to touch about this because we talked about this before. I don't know if people noticed, but you used the word believe a lot in this interview. And I haven't heard you say 3 other words, which are banned from the vocabulary and are probably cookie jar material, dollars in the penny jar around the office if people say it around you. Do you want to say a bit more about hope, wish, and I'm trying to remember the third one now. Luck. Yes. Thank you. Tell us why, I mean, especially in the world where we are trying to sell hope and where we want to wish people luck. Why are those 3 words offensive words for you?
Horrible. So yes, I eliminated as a kid from my vocabulary the words hope, wish, and luck. And so I'll dive into it. So when I was a kid and I would hope my dad would come pick me up, he never showed. When I would hope there was something to eat when I got home, never produced anything. So I stopped hoping and I replaced hope with belief, because for me, belief forces execution. If you believe you can have the big house, then you've got to execute to go get the big house. If you believe you can have the career you want, then you've got to take action and execute to do the things that are going to help you land that career. But you can drive through a neighborhood all day and hope you have the big house and in the car. It isn't going to produce anything. And so I'm a guy. So a pastor friend of mine, Brother Smith and I are talking one day, and he goes, JeVon, I cannot eliminate the word hope out of my sermon. He goes, I said it 16 times last week. And I said, okay, here we go. And I said, okay, Brother Smith, do you want me to hope there's a God, or do you want me to believe there's a God? And again, he's a pastor. He looks at me and he goes, damn, I never thought of it that way. And I said, because here's the thing. If I just hope there's a God, I don't have to really commit to a godly lifestyle. Yeah. But if I believe there's a God, I have to execute on a godly lifestyle. Yeah. So yeah, belief for me forces execution. Wish, Mark, that's just
Jeremy Cricket.
I don't know that it gets worse. Like there is no word for me worse than wish, because it truly does not drive through the neighborhood. I wish I was in shape. Well, get up and go to the gym or stop going to the drive-through. But you can wish all day. Doesn't produce anything. At least hope. Maybe there's a crumb of that. I don't find it, but okay. Some people say, well, there's hope. But wish, no. I mean, so much. So Mark, I've got 4 kids, 8, 7, 5, and 3. Matter of fact, my daughter just had her birthday last
Congratulations.
week. Thank you, sir. When that birthday cake hit the table and it was time to blow out the candles, we at the McCormick house.
You don't get cake if you said make a wish. Nobody gets cake if you say make a wish.
We make a goal. Right before we say, okay, L, what's your goal? And you have to speak your goal out loud. There's none of this bullshit, make a wish in your head and don't tell anybody. What the hell is that? So no, what's your goal?
Yeah.
And we speak that out loud. So yeah. And then luck, I mean, come on, luck that, people will say to me, oh my God, your childhood was so unlucky. No, it wasn't. Yeah. My childhood was amazing. The things that I learned, and people will say this to me as well. Well, what about the $100 million lottery winner? Wasn't that person lucky? I go, no, they executed. They bought a ticket.
Yeah.
And so there's no luck. I know I've had people battle with me and argue with me and debate with me. And again, this is how I've lived my life. I don't do hope, wish, or luck.
Love it. What about, for another time when I come over to Texas, often when I come and visit the office, I'll ask you another question about intention. What are your thoughts on the word? Like, I have an intention. Is that a dirty word? Is that an orange word? That's
no, not really. I'm
setting an intention. Like, we're going to set an intention for the rest of the meeting or whatever. I wonder if If that's
I'm very intentional with my words. I believe words matter. Growing up as a kid, people would say to me, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." Well, and if you got to edit this out, I understand. When you hear your mom be called a nigger lover, and when you hear yourself be called half breed, zebra, Oreo cookie, no, words hurt, and words are very powerful. And so for me, I'm very intentional with the limited vocabulary that I do have. It depends on how the word intent is used. So because I'm very intentional with the words that I use.
Love that. A couple of last questions for you. One of them is for entrepreneurs and leaders listening and watching us today who may or may not know that they have a story to share. And I think you and I probably are in the business of believing that everyone has a story to share. Nobody can benefit from even just owning and going through that process. But who are still resistant for whatever reason. They may think that nobody would care about their story. They might think that if they let their story out of the box, it would just be chaos and isolation, loneliness, and sudden death, in short. What is it that you'd like to tell them about what's on the other side of someone who's been afraid, who's been there, who's climbed that mountain, and who's seen the horizon? What would you like them to know?
If you truly believe that the most important thing in life is humanity and people, then I would say we all have a story that can impact someone, that can touch someone. So, you hear this and it becomes a bit cliche, but if you can only touch one person, then that's one person whose life has changed, because then that one person may go and touch another person. And so there's power in sharing your story, because you've experienced things, you've gone through things that other people haven't. Even my kids. My kids have an amazing life. Like you talk about winning the lottery. They won the lottery of parents. They live in a gated community. They go to private Christian school. They go on vacations. And so they have an amazing life. But the day will come, they too will have a story that they can share with others. So it doesn't matter that maybe you grew up affluent. Maybe you grew up like me. Maybe you just grew up, truly, truly middle class. We all have a story and experiences that we can share that will help and touch other people. More importantly, from the selfish perspective, it will also help you to share those stories, because you are holding things. We all are. Again, no matter if you grew up affluent, nice, 2-parent home, whatever the case may be, we all have things inside that, be it shame, be it fear of judgment, be it things that we did that we're maybe not necessarily proud of, but sharing those experiences, sharing those mistakes are so just life-changing. And I say this to people all the time. Here's the other word that I don't use more. I don't use fail. I truly believe you only fail if you stop trying. And I always use the story and tell people this. When Thomas Edison was discovering electricity, the light bulb, and they asked him, how does it feel to fail thousands of times? And he said, well, did I fail thousands of times, or did I find thousands of ways that didn't work? And Mark, in that moment when I read that or listened to it, old school on cassette tape, when I listened to it, it was life-changing for me, because what it told me was, oh, you only fail if you stop trying. Okay, so don't ever stop trying. And so, I've got some failed past relationships because we stopped trying. But the goal is, you will make mistakes. We all do. Learn, grow, don't repeat those mistakes. And I believe equally as important, share your mistakes with other people so they can learn, grow, and don't repeat those mistakes.
I love that. In a word, how does it feel to no longer be afraid of people finding out who you really are?
Free. It's the damnedest thing, Mark. When I was a kid, and I'll be quick in the story, I was 8 years old. My mom and I were, you read this in the book, my mom and I were standing in line waiting for our free allotment of welfare, our food stamps. And an older white lady looked down at me. She looked up at my mom, and then she spit in my mom's face, and she called her a nigger lover. one of, if not the greatest lesson I ever learned in that moment was, okay, because I'm mixed race, half white, half black, everyone's not going to like me. And that was such a freeing moment because I realized, okay, no matter what I do in this world, everyone's not going to like me because some people don't accept mixed race. Some people aren't going to like my skin color. And so it was such a freeing moment that, okay, everyone's not going to like you. What I also learned as I got older, because like I said, I edited myself, I played into the playbook, was I don't give a damn what people think about me, but I knew at times it mattered. And so you're running two opposites right there. I don't care what you think about me, but I also know it matters at times. And so back to your, what's my word? Free. Yeah. Very, very free, because here I am. This is me. If you don't accept me, I don't give a damn. If you like me, great. Hey, let's have a discussion. Let's talk. Yeah. But it's very free.
Before I ask you my final question, I want to acknowledge you just for having the courage, the vulnerability, and again, the leadership to not only share your story so vulnerably and openly in your book, but to actually show up continuously as a leader. And look, there's no doubt if we had another 2 hours, we could talk about, how we fail as leaders and how do we, get back up from that. But the fact that you're an example of a CEO who's actually, I put air quote, but it's true successful from an impact perspective, from a financial revenue perspective, from a team perspective, an award recognition perspective, who also has a really powerful story out there. It's, I hope, a beacon of hope for so many people listening and watching to think that there is a world in which they can show up every day, look at themselves in the mirror, love themselves unconditionally. And I think it starts with fully owning the story. So I just want to generally from the bottom of my heart say thank you for that, because it's a gift. And I hope you know it. And I'm so glad they convinced you to get it out there, not just for your kids, because I know it would have been a gift for your kids, but to have it out there is even a privilege for all of us. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Mark. It's it's again, I'm a God guy, and it took me time to embrace the path and say, okay, if this is my service to humanity, then I will serve, I will embrace the path, and I will do my part. And so everything I do now is from a place of service and support. I joke with people. So many people put so much emphasis on the fact that, CEO. And I tell people, man, I had 3 letters long before CEO. I said I had a GED. And so the 3 letters after my name did not change me. And I truly believe that if you are in leadership, your role is to serve and support. And that's the role of leadership. Yes, I make some decisions. Yes, I set a vision. Yes, I help with planning. But all of the people that I serve and support execute on the plan, execute on the vision. I'm only as good as the great people I get to serve. So from my position, everything I do is from a place of service and support.
Appreciate you for that. And final question, what does being unconventional mean to you?
Willing to do things that others aren't. And what I appreciate about even the word unconventional. So I believe they're one and the same. So my dad would always say when I was a kid, don't be common, which to me is the equivalent of unconventional. And so my dad, he would always say that to his prostitutes, though. He would always say, don't be common. Get out there on the corner, don't be common. And what he meant by that was don't dress like all the other prostitutes. Don't walk the corner like all the other prostitutes. And when you're in bed, don't do things all the other prostitutes do. Now, hell of a lesson that I took, but it was don't be common. And it stuck with me. And so even in leadership, even in my career, I've always been in search of how can I not be common or unconventional? Everything about me is damn near unconventional, to how I got here, to my academic background, to the way I think, to So when you say what does unconventional to me, that for me is where that came from, was don't be common. And so, yeah, that's what it means to me. Be willing to do what others aren't. It's sad in our society right now. Being willing to outwork everyone, being willing to do more than everyone. It's sad that that's become unconventional and uncommon. I share with my wife all the time. I said, right now, I would argue it's easier than ever to be successful, because while everybody else is yelling about the 4-day work week and work-life balance and don't check your emails first thing in the morning, and I'm willing to do everything unconventionally to succeed and bypass your ass.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, Will Smith said that I may not be the strongest, but I'll die on the treadmill. I'll die on the treadmill before you ever get off. I'll outwork you.
Yep.
That kind of mentality. Where can people find out more about you? Where can people, if they want to get in touch, share, how this interview, inspire them, touch them, if they want to find out more about your books or your next book, because I hope there's going to be another book. Where's the best place to go?
I do. I got my second book coming out in June. It's called Modern Leader. Comes out in June.
Nice.
Yeah, it just goes into what to speak on the topic of unconventional. Yeah. Going forward, it's sad. It shouldn't be unconventional, but the conventional playbook that corporate America has been built on, it's not going to work anymore. It's broken. You're leaving too many JeVons on the table. And so in modern leadership, it's a people first way of leading, but all people, not people who just come from the great 2-parent home, went to all the great schools, got all the great introductions. There is so much that we're leading on the table in leadership that we've got to create opportunities and open doors for everyone. So yeah, that book comes out in June, Modern Leader. I share a lot of my mistakes, thoughts, and everything on LinkedIn. And then this one's just blown me away, Mark. They will record me, and they've started posting on TikTok. And I am shocked by this. I am blown away. Mark, so they started doing this mid-January. So here we are mid-April. So 60 days, 90 days. And I've got like 39,000 followers. There's videos in there that have been viewed 1 million times. And all it is me talking about either leadership or giving my thoughts on something. So, but yeah, this whole TikTok, I'm showing my age here. It's completely taken off. It's just me sharing thoughts.
Yeah, that's amazing. And look, and also link up about Scribe Media. Anybody who's interested in finding out more about how to get their book, non-fictional memoir, out and getting the support. I went through the program. I was actually one of the first students part of the program when Hal and Emily were the coaches, and it was a phenomenal experience. And I do think you've got a world-class team of just world-class talent, people who care and just really good at what they do. So it's been an honor. Thank you so much for coming back on. I could spend another couple of hours just riffing off your soul, heart, and mind. So I appreciate you, JeVon. Whereas I know that you would say, I appreciate you, sir. So
yes,
thank
sir.
you very much. And I look forward to meeting in person whenever that happens.
Hey, Mark, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you for having me on. This is great. Still humbled and flattered every time someone has me on a podcast.
There you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Again, if you haven't, I really recommend you go and get your book. Hands a copy on I Got There, and I know that Modern Leader is going to be just as brilliant of a book. If anything that we spoke about today resonated, please let us know. You can contact me, as always, leave a comment below, and please feel free to reach out to JeVon McCormick on LinkedIn or TikTok, as we've just found out. But I really want to acknowledge you for having the courage and the determination to, go through this episode and be with it. And I want you to leave with this hopeful idea. And I didn't say the word hope because I think I'm going to get told off by JeVon, but that there's belief. Let me rephrase that you walk away with the belief that your story matters and that your story can impact someone's life by sharing it. And by owning it, you can also heal and come home to yourself. And that's what I'm hoping my book will also be about. But right now, this is about you. So if anything spoke to you, please let us know. Write down in the comments below. We always really appreciate that. But until next time, know that your message matters and that your story has value. And no matter what, keep the fire burning. I'll see you next time.